What is up? You have found We Like the Blazers. I am Brandon Mullen, and over there, as always, it is Connor Bergen. Connor, what's up, brother?
Hey, how's it going?
It's good. Did you notice anything different?
You said, I kind of just went with it, but you said a different name. You said a different last name.
I did, yeah. I am test piloting, Connor. I believe I'm going to be changing my last name to my wife's name of Mullen as there's actually, wow, I'm breaking a lot of news. I think we're ready to say Brandon's going to become a father, which is big news. Big news. It's big.
Sing Auld Lang Syne.
It's big. Oh, wow. Auld Lang that, and today being New Year's Eve, of course, Auld Lang Syne being
it's festive.
The soundtrack of the new year. But yeah, and long story short, when we got married, we kept our names, and we thought having a kid, we didn't really want to do the multiple last name thing. So then we were like, okay, we could pick a name and, what's meaningful to us and what do we like? And do you want to take Goldner or I can take Mullen? And through all this negotiation, Connor, I believe that I will be changing my name to Mullen. And so I'm going to just soft launch. I did change my profile name on BlueSky to Brandon Mullen Goldner at some point. I'll drop the Goldner.
I noticed that too. And, I kept meaning to be like, hey, your name's different, but I hadn't gotten to it yet.
And it is. I will say, obviously people have been changing their names when they get married for time immemorial. 99% of the time in our culture, it's been women. It's not often that the guys are changing their last name. And it's like, I can now understand. It's weird. I'm not super duper attached to my family name. I love my family. They're great. But it's strange. You call yourself one thing for a long time and then you call yourself something else. So anyway, Connor, that's the news there.
Yeah, no, I do want to ask one follow-up question. What you mentioned the negotiations. What was going down at that table? Were you giving up 2 seconds? One first round pick. Was there a promise for something later? What's going on?
She presented a firearm and pointed it at me, and I said, "Well, no, we at first we were like, let's pick something new because think about how last names are chosen or have been chosen in human history. Usually it's because of the work that you did, right? At least in Eurocentric culture, I can't speak to other cultures, but you'd have Fletcher or Baker, or one name we were considering was Whitaker, which is the derivative of that is wheat acre. So somebody who worked wheat on acres of land. And so we gotta
ask. Yeah. I'm sorry to cut you off, but was Brandon We Like the Blazers an option for the last name of your future child?
No, neither was Brandon Lillard, Brandon Drexler. They were all off the table. But really, the many names in history have been picked for reasons that are quite arbitrary, and then people just kept using them. So we were like, wouldn't it be cool to pick something that's meaningful to us? We thought about the Portland neighborhood where we first met, or the street that we moved into together. We thought of geological features that are, native to the Pacific Northwest. And so we went through all this stuff, and then finally we kind of doubled back, and I said, does your name mean anything to you? Which perhaps, Connor, I should have led with that question, because it turns out that it's not a super strong it's important to Cassie because of her grandmother, the name that she took, and not even her maiden name, but the name was important to her. So I said, well, geez, and logistically, what a pain to have to change two people's names. Wouldn't it be great to cut that work in half? Also, there's a whole credentialing thing. She's a doctor, that it's even more of a pain that her friends and colleagues have experienced as they've gotten married. So all to say, Connor, Brandon Mullen, I'm trying it on. It feels like an itchy new sweater. It doesn't quite roll off the tongue, but I'm going to roll with it. But that's not the only news we have here, Connor, because you are moving on up to something. Actually, this came off a lot better in the pregame. But Connor, I'm aware that you have been bequeathed your permanent season-long reporting credentials up until this point. It had been you'd been on the injury report day to day, game to game. Now you're fully off the injury report. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, well, it was not a day to day.
Okay, sorry.
Report. No, you're good. It was not. It
was hour to hour. Oh, geez.
Yeah,
even
they
worse.
were like, "What did you tweet at the first quarter?"
What did you say on the last We Like the Blazers podcast?
Yeah. No, it wasn't day to day. They gave me a full season pass this year, which actually I wasn't expecting. I thought it was going to be day to day or game to game. But it was actually, they gave me the full season pass, but it was not locker room access.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
No problem. Because that's what Ben Golliver used to. For the longest time, he was game to game, and I think that was just kind of what people assumed would be for Blazers Edge.
Yeah.
But so now yesterday at the end of the game, it was pretty funny. They gave the PR, or like, I shouldn't call him PR. He's like the president of communications.
The comms person.
He like, oh, I think I found your pass somewhere, Connor. Like, did you lose it? And then it was a little, yeah. And he was like, here you go. Like, here's your locker room access. And it was a fun little,
that's cute.
I felt like a little like junior Cub Scout reporter a little bit, because the room was like, hey, nice job. But
no, that's cool, man. I honestly, like, as somebody who is, you haven't worked decades in this profession, and you have earned your way into getting more access, into being able to go to the locker room. You've earned your way into, I just have to say, it's very, very cool. Congratulations. You have earned it. And
thank you so much.
Also, the perspective, I want to keep this in mind too. This is not just true of reporting. The perspective of people in professions who have not been in the profession for a long time is very, very valuable. And so, I hope that you don't feel too much imposter syndrome stuff. I'm sure that we all feel that way sometimes in the work that we do.
It's been there at times, but nothing too horrible.
That's good. Yeah. Well, congrats, dude. That's super cool. How have you, did you, what is it that you are either looking forward to or thinking about as it relates to the work that you do reporting that may change or become enhanced because of this different level of access?
Yeah, it's already, I'm noticing the difference of it. The one thing is relationship building with players, and because when you're doing it just from the press conferences and just the very team regulated interviews, it can be a little robotic. Not only are your questions, probably you want to be more formal with them. So not only are the questions maybe a little bit different, but you just don't get to really know people that way. It's there's a barrier between you. So I've been around the team all year, but I don't think any of them really know my name. I haven't had any just one-on-one, hey, how's it going? Conversation with any players. So that will start to change because in the locker rooms, it's a lot less formal. I didn't even know this, but you can just, I went up to Rasan. I was like, I can just go up and say, talk to Donovan Clingan. He was like, yeah. I was like, cool. I'm going to go do that.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then the other thing is you just get to see different things that you wouldn't have seen. And it lends to way more stories, which that is what I'm most excited about, is before I'm working off everything that people can see on YouTube. So in a way, yes, I'm presenting it in maybe a more narrative and maybe a more entertaining way than just going on YouTube and watching the interviews. But if you wanted to see what the players were saying, you didn't have to go read my work. You could just watch YouTube. And now I'm having access to interviews and conversations that are truly just my own, that could be unique to my angles and my stories. For an example, yesterday, when I went to go talk to Donovan Clingan, it was because he had a jersey on his chair last night of a 76ers player. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I saw it nicely. I was like, I didn't see him swap.
Donovan, excuse me, is that not your opponent tonight, sir?
Yes.
Did you know that?
Very interesting. There's not stars on the Blazers jersey. And so turns out it was Andre Drummond's jersey. I didn't notice they had swapped, but they swapped jerseys because Andre Drummond played at UConn.
That's right.
So
he did.
They had the UConn connection.
As a Connecticut, I should know that. But I did not.
And apparently both are not only went to UConn, grew up in UConn, grew up in UConn, grew up in Connecticut.
UConn City, the capital of Connecticut.
But so I talked to him about that, and he talked about just like the brotherhood of UConn and how the alumni players really like have a special bond and try to stick together, and how Andre Drummond had actually kind of they had known each other at college or when he was at UConn, but since he was getting into the league, their communication has increased more, and Andre has been kind of giving him more advice about adapting to the league. So that was just like my first taste of it, but it was like already I could see like, oh, this is going to be very helpful to adding more unique stories for Blazers Edge. So that's the most exciting part.
That's really neat. Yeah, I can imagine that. I mean, there's a lot to say here about having the opportunity to build that trust that you have, given your limited access, that the team, and I reckon the players too, have seen you there, even though you may not have a personal relationship with them. They knew you well enough to say, yeah, like, we'll allow him in the back room now. Because I've thought about this a lot as someone who, did a little bit of reporting, worked for a newspaper, but had not been a sports reporter. But thinking about the discretion that you have to use as a reporter when you're building relationships, you're talking with people, you're also just human beings at the end of the day. And certainly there will be, probably maybe already have been, conversations that you will have that you would not share, will not share, even if they were a real juicy story. And that there is a level of professional discretion that you're using, also still upholding journalistic integrity and wanting to be able to bring an objective and unique viewpoint into this team and kind of let people know what's going on. But that discretion is something that can only be demonstrated through your actions and time and through your professionalism. So I just want to say, again, congratulations. It's very, very cool. I also want to say to the University of Connecticut, in fact, started out in 1881 as Storrs Agricultural College in Storrs, Connecticut. So yes, there is not a UConn City, but there was once a Storrs College in Storrs, Connecticut. That's close enough for me. Anyway, shout out to the University of Connecticut.
Were you looking that up mid-conversation? Very impressive. I didn't even notice. I didn't hear the click-clack. I didn't notice it. It's underneath the frame. Very good.
Did a knick-knack, paddywhack, give a dog a Wikipedia tab. And I have camera, obviously, to the lower right. I have the Zoom screen. So someday it would be nice to like optimize when I'm looking at you, that it is like looking at you rather than looking at you that way. And then I have my tab over here. I have all my stuff. So you try your best, They do make little cameras that like kind of fall in the middle of your screen and are just a very tiny dot so that you can look straight at it and have it, so your eyes are always looking at the camera. But I'm not ready for that level of investment yet, Connor. We need some sponsors first. Manscaped, get at me. Cool. Well, yeah. Hey, man, congratulations. That's super cool. Speaking of interesting locker room access and stories, Greg Oden visited Portland for the first time since his playing days. Was the first time, at least, he was back at the Moda Center since he played there. And just a lot of really interesting stuff came up for me as a longtime Blazers fan, as someone where I remember well where I was when Greg Oden had his devastating knee injury that basically foretold the end of his career and the end of his time in Portland. I was at Block 15 in Corvallis, Oregon, which is a neighborhood pub on the corner of 3rd and Jefferson, and watching that game on the TV, and then all of a sudden he was down, and all of a sudden everyone in the bar was dead quiet. And yeah, so there's a lot. I'm babbling a little bit, but wanted to kick it to you. I had plenty of Greg Oden memories, including that horrible one.
I want to get more into those in a second, so I'm glad you brought them up.
Yeah, and let's do that, but let's first talk about the here and now. We're Greg back in Portland. So you were also there for Greg Oden's return. He had a press conference before the game. He was supposed to meet with the team the day before during practice, but his flight was delayed multiple times and wasn't able to make that. I think he may have met with the team then after that game, but I don't think there's been any unique reporting about that if that meeting did take place. But Connor, what did you take from Greg Oden returning, having a press conference, the team honoring him? He was up on the big screen during the game. Like, clearly there was a coordinated effort between Greg Oden and the team. He was on the broadcast, I think, during the second quarter, talking to Lamar and Kevin. But what was your take, or what is it that you I'm not teeing this up very well. Connor, you start talking about Greg Oden back in Portland.
Yeah.
Go.
No, my takeaway, the first thing that comes to my mind is just he was the most interesting, entertaining, and insightful interview all season. Like, he was such an interesting guy to talk to, and his answers, they were like funny. He was cracking jokes during it. They were wise. I was curious how much people would dive into his past with the team and just like the disappointment of it all. Because of course it's a touchy subject, but how could you not talk about it with him being back? So yeah, it was interesting to see how he would handle those questions. And he just seemed like a guy who had done a lot of, he talked about it. He said, first, he was just all happy about being back, and words like grateful and thankful, and like only good memories he said he had. And then somebody asked, would you have always felt that way? And he was
like,
no. Yeah, no, not at all. Like, I had to grow into that. And he's like, if you would have asked me 7 years, I would have probably thought differently. So just
can I say something about that, or do you want to? Sorry.
No, go on. You can say it.
Specifically about that piece and that introspection from Greg. And I don't want to take too much away from when people are giving answers, the way that they give an answer. I think sometimes people may be nervous, people may be tired, people may be amped up. But I will say that I noticed, I'm curious if you noticed this, his quality of response to me really read like someone who was calm, comfortable, confident in who he was and in his past and present. And that was really, really cool to hear. Again, not just in what he was saying, but how he was saying it. He is a grown-up dude who has been through some shit and has come out the other end of it healed. That's what I took from the quality of answer he was giving. Mm-hmm. I'm curious if you picked up on that. Again, not to flash your badge and be the tone police, but if that came through in how he was answering stuff.
Oh, it came through. And I think, just like you were watching it on YouTube, I think everybody who watched it, the video, could feel it. It came through not only in the room, but just from the video of the answers. Because he's had he's battled some demons, and everybody knows it, and it's all so public, and there must just be so disappointing to have that great weight of expectations and have basketball be like your thing and have it all just taken away. He spoke like a guy who had done a lot of work to reckon with all that and get to a place where he could come back to Portland. He said he had been for a few years now. He wouldn't have minded coming back, but he just was busy with work and everything. Yeah. But just for him to come back and embrace it. And I think just from reading other articles that have been written about him, I think he's starting to realize that people still respect him because they know that it wasn't like a work ethic thing. It just was like a bad deal. And it's like I wrote it in my article, but it's like a sports tragedy. And I put sports in front of there to obviously it is sports and it's an injury.
And it's also, it's a personal tragedy too. Because take any person who is really good at something and particularly top of their field at something, and particularly in a public field, and have that just dissolve when you're in your early 20s.
Exactly. Which I think is so, I thought the same thing. Like, he is a story for anybody. It doesn't have to be
That's right, yeah.
a NBA basketball player. It can be like any common Joe, any time, like, because people in life have to course correct all the time. I am a young man. I am only 26, but I have figured that out. That, like,
sweet summer child. As someone
I don't want to talk like I'm some like wise soul, but I am realizing that things don't always go the way people hope them to, and life can be very harsh to certain dreams, and it's not easy when that happens. So I think like listening to his answers about, I thought it was really, the one thing too is he was so vulnerable. Like, he also was asked, do you like entertain thinking about the past and like what could have happened? And he wasn't just like, no, like not at all. Like he was like, to be honest, like, yes, like occasionally, like when I'm by myself, like I do. He's like, but then he said, like, I can't, but I know that like it's not probably good to spend too much time of my life and my thoughts thinking about that. So like I try not to spend too much time on it.
Can I find him such a fascinating person. And even for what you just said too, and without me oversharing, I do think that what you just described, that line, that balance of being honest about what's happened in your past and even allowing your thoughts to drift backward from time to time, while also being really firm in what you want for yourself and being pretty disciplined about how you need to act on a daily basis in order to get closer to that which you may want, that there's something in there, because I do know I have experienced in my life times when I tip too far in either direction, or maybe I've known people who I believe tip too far in either direction. Either they're spending all their time in the past. Everything is nostalgia. It used to be so great. I remember when I did this. You remember how we used to blah, blah, blah. It's like, you were locked in 1988, and that's not ideal. And on the other end, you have people who are like, that's dead to me. That never happened. I don't ever think about that. And that's like, really? And so I do
that's
like,
not great either. It's
right. So, and again, I'm not passing judgment if you're happening to listen to this and you find yourself kind of caught in either of those spaces.
Hey, screw you, Brandon. I always think about that.
But like, I do think what Greg Oden demonstrated, and what, again, I hate to be such a vibes guy, but the vibes I picked up from him was this extremely healthy acknowledgement of the past, while also a very confident, clear-minded, and disciplined focus on what he wants to do, what he wants for himself. And I just think it's very cool. By the way, the dude is what? He's like 37? 36. So like, I mean, he's a young man too. He's got plenty of time to do all sorts of cool stuff. And I think he knows that. So that's pretty sweet. Was there anything else that jumped out to you? I had a couple more thoughts, but yeah.
Yeah. Just want to like, I think everybody, well, like you said, okay, like there's a few things. I'll try to bullet point them. One, the room was so small and
he was so very large,
and he was so tall.
Yeah.
And it was just like this weird kind of anticipation. Like,
what was the room that
it was like in this back. I had
never seen the background before. I mean, not that means anything.
It was like down the hall. They gave me directions for it, and I was like, what the fuck?
Why didn't they? Whatever, it doesn't matter. But like, I'm curious why they chose this.
It was in, but it kind of like, I liked it though. It lent to this like intimate kind of atmosphere, and like it corresponded with, like you said, his vibes and his overall calmness. But it was just like that. It was on the main bottom floor of the Moda Center. It's like down the hall, like in this random hallway, and then there was this room with carpet. Aren't always
carpet.
Yeah. So
my My kingdom for a carpeted room. In fact, this room, the audio is so bouncy in here, and partly because it has like a little rug, but not a carpet. And so actually, yeah, like my audio kingdom for a carpet in this room.
Yeah. I can't tell. So.
Well, I wish I could say I could fix it in post, but it's very difficult to get rid of a bouncy room. But someday I'll fix it. Anyway, continue. Carpet, ceiling,
lights. Me bullet points, and there was carpets. but
have you ever been in? It reminds me. I don't know why I just thought of the Key and Peele sketch where he's like checking into the hotel, and he's like, and it comes with continental breakfast. Continental breakfast?
Yeah,
you have your cereals and your muffins. Anyway, yeah. Has carpet. Continue.
Has carpet. Yeah. No. It was such an interesting atmosphere for him to come into. Like there was the local television cameras. Blazers practices and games lately, they're not the most publicized events, and this was different. There was like 4 like local television stations there, reporters I had not seen before, all just kind of like, it was a moment for this guy to come back. Like it was such, just like the history of him is so big, even though it didn't turn out the way that people wanted it. But the fact that he came into that room immediately, he started it off smiling, saying happy holidays, like shook a few people's hands before that. Like, so just the immediate atmosphere of the room stood out to me as one thing. And kind of like the spectacle of the event was like rare this season and interesting. 2, like you said, he's a young man still. So like he has so much time to do different things. Like I think everybody was just so happy after knowing everything he had been through to just see him so on his feet. His family was there, his 8-year-old daughter, who like he mentioned a lot during the interview, his wife, Sabrina, that's who he sat with on courtside. He seemed just so focused on his family, but then also he's no longer, so if anybody is not privy, he has been a college coach for the last few years. He went to Ohio State with his old coach, Thad Matta. Then he followed him to Butler and was an assistant coach at Butler. He left the program this past September, but he mentioned he's still teaching financial literacy as like an athlete advisor for this company called Educor. He said he's got some camps in the works. He still wants to train players. Like he still wants to be around the game. And then he did say, once maybe my daughter's 16 and doesn't want to hang out with me anymore, I'll dive like fully back into coaching, like formally. So just, I wanted to point out, yeah, like it was so great to hear all the stuff he was doing. And I think it just, because a lot of the reporters, I wasn't there 10 years ago when all this went down, but like several of them were there and they were talking to me about it. And they just were like, it's so great. Like he seems like a different guy. So that was the other thing that it just was nice to see that he had a lot of stuff going for him. And just like, yeah, like people, you could see it that he seemed firmly on his feet after everything.
Yeah. And beyond just the individual noting of Greg Oden, the person, and how he presented and what he's up to and his perspective, is that, and I'm not the only one to notice this, plenty of people have, but I definitely firmly got this feeling again where the Blazers are making an effort to reach out to people who used to play for them in a way that doesn't seem like they had as much under previous administrations. And it's an interesting thing. I think it's really smart. I don't mean to go too far into this today because we have a lot more that we want to get to, but the Blazers as a franchise have to be honest with themselves. They're a professional sports team in a relatively small metropolitan market. The Blazers are a franchise that has won one championship. They're a team that has gone to 4 finals, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3 finals, 3 finals?
I think 3, yeah.
A handful of more conference finals. What I'm trying to say, Connor, is that they are a small market team with not a ton of success. They don't have very many players who were or are elite players who identify with Portland. The person I can think of who is the strongest combination of elite player found some level of success and actually gives a shit about the city is Damian Lillard, who is currently not playing for the Portland Trailblazers. This franchise does need to create some connection with itself, and you can't do that if you don't have players who meant something to the franchise coming in, sitting, being honored, being shown on the screen, interviewing, putting on the Portland hat. Like, I think that's
they're talking to current players. Like, right. It's so cool. I think that Greg Oden gave props to Deni Avdija.
Yeah, that's right.
And at the practice facility, they shook hands and he talked to Sharp. Like, I think that, like you said, it adds to a culture for an organization.
And again, there are some teams who don't need to do those things as much because they can float by on their market and the amount of money that they get. But the Blazers do need to do that. And it does seem strange that they haven't been doing that as much. And it's good to see that they're doing more of that. So shout out to Greg Oden. Shout out to the Trailblazers organization. Anything else on Oden before we move into more of the here and now?
I got one final thing, and because I didn't want to put this in my article about it because it's about myself. So I was like, well, Greg Oden was in town. Here's about me.
The opening graph of your story should have been, let me tell you something about me, period, new paragraph. Really missed opportunity there.
Yeah, no, for sure. So no, this is the perfect time to drop this little narrative. I was going into 3rd grade when Greg Oden was drafted. I was just starting to really figure out about sports and really, really get into it. And this is what I like to call my Sports Center coma that lasted for 12 years after this, before I was like, wait, there's other things to life that I should figure out about besides sports. But I was going into 3rd grade. I remember the draft lottery, and I was on my hands and knees praying that each pick went by, and of course, the Blazers get it. I sprinted around my house, up and down the stairs. And I'm at the age at that point where I genuinely thought I had magical powers, because I was praying for them to get this pick, and they did. And my mom went to Ohio State. So at the time, I was a huge Buckeyes fan, so I knew all about Greg Oden. The fact that the Ohio State have beaten the Ducks a lot in football has slightly tainted that love, but that's another story for another day. So I was so excited, and then I remember when I went to CYO basketball practice that next fall. There was 3 or 4 different players on my team who all showed up on the first day of practice with Greg Oden jerseys on. It was such a moment. People were so excited. And as a kid, it was the biggest thing in the world that the Blazers got this guy. And then I remember coming home from school one day, and my mom was like, oh, Greg Oden got hurt. He won't be able to play until next season. And I sobbed. I cried. That's kind of where the story ends. I kind of forget where it leads after that. But those are the distinct memories I have, is the draft lottery, getting him, going to practice, everybody's the jerseys, and then the heartbreak for a 3rd grader to be I have to wait a year to watch this guy play. That sounds like the longest time ever. So that I just didn't want to say, with my own personal history attached to Greg Oden, it was very interesting and a cool little reporting moment to be able to ask him questions about his life and his career.
That's really, really neat. And it's funny, not to reopen my Greg Oden Blazers wound, but just, I told you where I was when he got hurt. But I also think there was, to your point about when they won the draft lottery, when they picked Greg Oden, and when he first started working out with the team before he got hurt and had to sit out his rookie season, there was a magical moment in there for me as a fan, thinking, well, they're going to be contenders eventually. And I think that even after he came back and had his, what you'd call a red shirt rookie season, I have to be honest with myself that like that magic had already sort of faded a little bit, and like, you know, it was still really cool. Still, I mean, I don't know, but it's just so that little. It's like, what's the lesson in here? I don't know if there is a lesson in here, but just that like the fact that he hadn't even played yet, and that was the moment at which it was like, oh wow, like. Anyway, shout out to Greg Oden. Good dude. I don't know why to end on such a downer note. No, like you're sobbing. I'm at the bar. Everyone's quiet. He got hurt. But
it
cool.
all ended up okay.
Yes, that's right. And no, I think good on him. Good on the Blazers organization. I mean, I'm plenty critical of the Blazers, mostly out of love and sometimes out of just what I'm seeing and want to comment on it. I think good on them for reaching out and for making. I think the team did a really good job of supporting him in his return and making it special and making it a big deal, because it is a big deal. I thought that was really neat. Maybe not quite as big of a deal, but happening around the same time was the Blazers getting a chance to see what they'd look like under a different head coach. Now, first of all, you know, I want to send my thoughts and warm supporting vibes to the Billups family. Chauncey Billups had to take a couple games off because his grandmother had passed, and you know that sucks, and you know we're sorry. So shout out to the Billups family. Hope that you're all doing okay. But also, it's true that because of the 2 games that Billups took off, that we did get to see the Blazers what they'd look like under a different head coach, Nate Bjorkgren, who was a former head coach with the Indiana Pacers. Dare I say, had a checkered exit from the Pacers, and a lot of stuff came out after he left about him being, you know, somewhat disrespectful to people, that people didn't want to play for him, that he had been overbearing. And so now he comes in during this last offseason as an assistant after Scott Brooks's contract was not re-upped. And so we got to see the team under Nate Bjorkgren. The Blazers went 2-0. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, Connor, that there's some enormous sea change happened or that things looked oh so different under Nate Bjorkgren, but I'm curious, what did you think in that very small sample size with the team was playing under a different head coach? Was there anything that you saw that raised an eyebrow or like half an eyebrow, or just made you think, like that is interesting and that looks somewhat different? Did anything jump out to you during those 2 games?
The biggest thing, and like almost the only thing, like things weren't crazy different. Like I know some people were like, the energy of the team was way better. I don't know if I saw that totally. Like I think it was around the same, you know, like give or take the night. The Blazers can be really awesome with energy, or they can be kind of giving stuff. So even Greg Oden critiqued the team's effort in the beginning of the game against Dallas, which was awesome. But the biggest thing was just that. Who was that against when Scoot hit the game winner? The days are running.
The Jazz.
The world-beating Jazz.
The Jazz.
But
and when I think about world-class Jazz, you know what I think of? I think of Utah. So aptly named team.
Hey, Paul actually said that their Jazz scene is pretty solid now. In one of his previews.
Listen, man, we're not talking about Utah's Jazz scene right now. We're not going to do that.
All right, to the point. And we talked about this on the last podcast, when the young guys are playing well and have it cooking and have earned the minutes for that game, and not only are they playing well, the veterans are playing poorly. This season should give the coach the flexibility to close with the younger guys. And that's what Nate Bjorkgren did against the Jazz. Scoot had it cooking. Deni was great. And he closed with them against the Jazz. And it gave Scoot a longer leash to make some mistakes, because he did make mistakes. Even though he was playing well, he had some mistakes in that game, even late. But then it turned out, leaving them in gave Scoot the ball in his hands with the game on the line with 10 seconds left, and he took the shot and made it. And
no timeout either.
No timeout either, which, again, maybe if Scoot bricks that shot, like, people are like, why the hell did Nate Bjorkgren not call a timeout? But now he's a genius, and I kind of like it. Like, I like that he let it go. And I think, like, moments like that, because I was starting to get a little gloom and doom in my own mind about Scoot, like, to be honest. And moments like that, I'm sure, are huge for his confidence. And, like, he won't admit it. He's like, this isn't a stepping stone. I always play the way I play. But, like, you hope that it builds confidence and can kind of help him take further steps. And, like, he wouldn't have been able to take that step of getting a game winner if he was on the bench. And I think most games this season, with Chauncey Billups coaching, he probably would have stuck with the veterans at the end. So I think that was the biggest change, and it made Bjorkgren look fantastic. And people have been clamoring for Scoot to get those opportunities. I think sometimes he deserves them and sometimes he doesn't. But, like, that night he did, and so that was nice to see. And it's like what you want to see in this year that's not for winning, like, it's for development. So it's like, can we get the third overall pick in there? Like, let's not give up on it just yet. So that is what stood out to me. Is that what stood out to you, Brandon?
Yeah, and I did want to specifically talk about Scoot Henderson, and this is a little tricky to talk about, and how much do you ascribe to a young player's development or lack thereof to the coach? And, how much of it is just they're going to go through ups and downs? I mean, I did want to note a couple things that, Scoot went through a 3-game stretch, one of those games being coached under Chauncey Billups, where it's the only 3-game no, that's wrong, actually. You know what? Hey, we're going to go back. Let me put it this way. Scoot hadn't played that many minutes in a month, okay? And he's supposed to be one of the people who, to your point, is supposed to getting development minutes. I can't sit here in good faith and say into a microphone that, like, everything looks so different under Nate Bjorkgren. I want to fully admit and take accountability for all of my shit posting on BlueSky. Because, look, if you know me, you know that I'm not the biggest fan of Chauncey Billups as a coach. I personally, and close your ears, everybody, I personally do not think that Chauncey Billups should be an NBA head coach for this franchise or, frankly, any other franchise. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be a good coach someday. He certainly could be. Again, this is all my opinion. But what I will say is that when you then see a different coach and things look a little different, and it's kind of hard to get away from, like, wow, if they win, it's good. And if they lose, it's bad. Like, to your point about not taking the time out, if Scoot had heaved up a contested mid-range shot and missed it, we'd be saying different things probably and thinking different thoughts. So I want to take accountability and say that perhaps that my pre-existing biases are in fact coloring my analysis of what I'm seeing. Oh my gosh.
That is good. Wow. So, you hit the psyche right here.
I'm just saying that, like, take what I say with a grain of salt, because I clearly do have biases. Now, maybe these biases are well-informed and perfectly objective, but Connor, perhaps they're not. So I'm saying a whole lot of words. I don't think it was all that. I don't think it was all that much different. Okay. Yeah. It's great that they won 2 games. I don't think it was all that much different.
I agree. There is, and I will say one other small thing that's different, and this is, like, mostly cosmetic. Chauncey Billups, very laid back guy, especially on the sidelines.
Oh yeah.
And, like, I'm not even saying
Bjorkgren, not so much.
No, I'm not even saying that's, like, wrong. Like, Chauncey has his coaching style and his communication style with players. It's, I think, less visible sometimes. And then this isn't to say he's not talking to people. Like, I see him coaching players all the time during timeouts, during free throws, pulling guys aside and talking to them. But Nate Bjorkgren is very, very animated. He's pacing up and down the sideline. Like
he looks a little like a college coach, like an older school college coach.
Yeah, and he's even doing that when he's the assistant. I noticed, like, for much of the year, I was like, who the hell is this dude? Who's like,
who is this dude?
Who is this dude who's, and then of course, I looked it up as Nate Bjorkgren. But who's this dude running up to Chauncey's ear to tell him something at different times? So, like, that also is a different style, and it's, people can see that. And with a team that's not doing super well and has been kind of criticized for maybe lack of effort or being laid back, and being a young team that needs more regimental discipline, I think seeing that, I understand why a fan would be like, well, yeah, that's what we need. So that is another difference that's very visible, that people have been pointing out. And I understand, I can see like the point of view why they would.
Well, okay, here's another thing that was maybe a little bit different too. And we're just, I mean, again, it's so 2-game sample size, a small individual player performances. And again, on how much do you ascribe that to a coach or not? Deni Avdija. So he had 2 of his better games of the season in that 2-game stretch. Consecutive 20-point games, I believe, for the second time this season. And in fact, I do want to say too, thank you to Basketball Reference, that over the last 15 games, which is not that small of a sample size, that Deni Avdija has been, you talk about people who are cooking, that dude's got a spatula and tongs, and he is going to town on the cast iron pan. He's averaging 17 points, 5.6 boards, 4 dimes, and he's shooting, importantly, over 50% from the field. Even more importantly, he's shooting 42% from deep on 5 attempts. And perhaps most importantly of all, just this is a stylistic difference between Deni Avdija and the way he wants to play and what we've seen from the Blazers under the last decade under a Damian Lillard-led team. He likes to go fast. He's been getting to the line. So in that larger sample size, he's been only getting to the line 4 times a game. But in those last few games, a double-digit number of free throw attempts. Is that the coach just saying, go do your thing? I mean, do we want to see this Blazers team with, and Deni is only he's 24. He's not super old. He ostensibly has room to continue developing. Do we want to see the ball in this dude's hands more? And yes, before you answer, Connor, I realize that he had one of the most unfortunate double-doubles you could have, because he had 10 turnovers last game.
That was bizarre.
Do we want to see the ball in Deni Avdija's hands more? Is there something there? I don't know. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yes. We do.
And scene, and we're done.
He's their best player right now. Like, he is their best player.
I get a fan you. It's a hot take. Do you have some oven mitts for that hot take, sir?
I don't even think it's hot right now. Like, he's been their most consistent, most impactful player for like a month and a half now. And like, we talk about some of the other players, they're having a good stretch. Are they breaking out? And it'll be like 3 games, and then it'll kind of go back to the mean, and then break out. Deni has just been consistently good, very good for like a month and a half. Yeah. And not only, like you said, his style of play, he's kind of like the only guy I feel like that really plays with like gusto on this team, like where it just has like a pop.
And sometimes that leads to 10 turnovers. Because, by the way, I'm interrupting you, but like something I saw in the Philly game yesterday, and I've been on vacation for a bit, and I've been staying up way past my bedtime. Also, shout out to Theater of the Final Bar Line, because I've been playing that game way too much. So much fun. But watching Deni Avdija, and some of his there's a particular pass in the fourth quarter, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm replaying it in my mind. And he cuts to the left side, and the shot clock is winding down, and he darts out to the left corner three, and sort of mid-stride, he turns his body and boom, he throws this pass cross court through traffic right in the letters of someone who is on the opposite corner. It was a pass that very, very few people would have seen, and a pass that even fewer people would attempt, and then a pass that even fewer people could see and attempt and actually execute. It didn't lead to an assist either, but it was just like, what the hell was that?
The team looks so much better when he's on the floor, and it not only because of how he's scoring, but people seem to be moving more. And he's finding them.
That's right.
Sometimes it leads.
I know. That's right. Yes.
No. It's like we're like this is something good. Like this is something tangibly good. There is no caveats. There's no like in 2 years maybe he'll have the tools to do this.
Yeah, it's like you do that now.
This is tangibly good, and it's nice to see. And that's maybe the hot take if he's the best player sounds great.
It sure does. I'm clipping that out.
So here's what I think is the more
headline: Connor Bergen said that.
Connor Bergen, yeah. Everybody else sucks, and no.
Connor Bergen is the best, and you all are terrible. That's the headline.
No, he is the lead. I could say this. That one, I'm like, I think so. This one, I can say for full confidence, he is the Blazers' least flawed player. That is like 100%. Because even when he was so poor on offense to start the year, he was still doing things where you're like, oh, he's impacting the game with rebounding. He's moving the pace. And now that the shots are going in, it's like, oh, now he's even he's fantastic now. So
I want to pat myself on the back because I believe back in early November, after maybe the first 10 or so games, actually, I can do this quickly if I'm clever enough about it. Through his first 11 games, he was averaging only 9 points. He was shooting only 34% from the field. He was shooting 17% from deep.
That's bad.
And it was at that point, give or take, where I tweeted on BlueSky, I'm not calling it skeeted. I do like Skyline. I've seen people I saw on my Skyline. I like that. That's cool.
I like that. That's better than skeeted.
I'll use that. But I'm gonna keep using tweeted. I tweeted some version of, it is gonna be so cool when statistical Deni Avdija catches up to eye tests Deni. And Connor, that is what we're seeing now. So I want to pat myself on the back because I knew it was coming.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So it's been fun, and I hope that we get to see more of that. I do think, to your point about him being the least flawed player, the most complete, the most NBA player-ish looking player of the younger players, would really like to see what he looks like as a leader of this team, which I think he could be in a slightly different iteration of this team. And we still have trade deadline stuff to talk about in the weeks and months ahead. But before we get out of here, because we are running short on time, we're going to leave some topics on the table. Unless you want to jump in before we go to questions from BlueSky.
Let me just say, I forgot to get to one point when we're talking about Nate Bjorkgren. That was kind of funny. He played Jeremy Grant 40 minutes in his second game against the Mavs, and like Rupert got. I'm trying to find it fast because
not very many. I think he got like 6 minutes.
Yeah, like Bjorkgren was playing to win, and like some of that developmental stuff that we get mad at Billups for was there in that game. So I do just want to like point that out as not be like he is some messiah of young player, like freeing them all. Like there was some of that. So,
and I do, I think it's, I mean, for someone like Bjorkgren, who was a head coach and who is now getting a different opportunity, and who's relatively young. Yeah, totally. And I don't know how old he is, but I would guess him to be about my age. I mean, I don't think he's that old. Like, I think he's in maybe his 40s. Mm-hmm. Actually, let me quickly, just before, how much of a compliment did I just give him? Oh, he's 49. He's looking great. But so, anyway, yeah, shout out to the Blazers, shout out to Deni Avdija, and shout out to Nate Bjorkgren, 2-0 in his regular season tenure.
I do have the minutes right here real fast. 42 minutes for Grant against the Mavs. 32 for Deni, which is nice, but also Kamara was out. 12 minutes for Klingon, 8 for Murray, 4 minutes for Rupert. So 12 minutes for Klingon. That's not lovely, but also Aiden was actually really playing super well that game. But I'm just wanted to point that out.
I want to point something else out too. If this trend continues, we're going to talk about it maybe next show. Jeremy Grant, the Dunked On podcast with Daniel LaRue and Nate Duncan, a podcast which is the only the only basketball podcast that I actually pay money to subscribe to. By the way, friend of the show, Nate Duncan, we should have him on again. Appreciate him very much. They did an episode, Connor, of the NBA's most untradeable contracts. Jeremy Grant featured heavily in that show. DeAndre Ayton featured in that show as well, but Jeremy Grant made Daniel LaRue's top 5 most untradeable contracts in the NBA. And I have to say this too. His last 5 games, Connor, Jeremy Grant, unfortunately, is averaging less than 10 points a game. He is unfortunately shooting 29% from the floor. That's just not going to get it done. And a different show, different topic, but where are the Blazers as they go into the trade deadline, and what can they reasonably potentially expect to get from some of these players? We can't talk about that now. We don't have time. We want to go to BlueSky. We want to get to your questions. We always appreciate your questions when we solicit them. I did this a half hour before the show. So we got 2 questions here. I'm going to ask you them both.
Is it Keith?
Not this time. I think that he might be still asleep.
Darn it, Keith. Keith, get on here. Wake up, Keith. I need questions.
Shout out to Keith. But first question comes from Cloudy at Stephen C. Smith. You know what? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm reading this question again. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm calling an audible. Cloudy, I love you. I'm not asking this question right now, but I love you and keep them coming. Second question is coming from Terry. Shout out to Terry from the Third Bench at Terrence Online. So friend of everybody, really. Terry's a cool human. Probably one of the coolest people I've not met in person. I've been in their proximity at Blazers games. I know who they are. I've talked to them online. I've bought stuff from them, but have not actually met them in person. So shout out to Terry. If the Blazers had to switch their primary colors from red, black, and white to any 3-color combination, what would you want that to be and why? And I'm going to hold your feet to the fire, Connor. This reminds me a little bit of when we asked Senator Ron Wyden, what name would you suggest for the new women's WNBA franchise? He was like, well, I am not letting you duck this, Connor.
I'm going to leave that up to the marketing department.
Which is a perfectly acceptable.
I had never been so politically moved. I was like, wow,
and it's also shout out to Ron Wyden, but I'm not convinced that there's any trouble to get into by suggesting a franchise name and not having it be the name, or maybe it's who knows. Anyway,
that would have derailed his next campaign.
Scandal as he picks the wrong franchise name. Connor, for you, if the Blazers were not red, black, and white, all colors that you have in your screen currently right now, in fact, 2 of them are on a hat hanging on the wall behind you, what colors might they be?
Brown. Okay, what's unfortunate is my first thought would be green and white because of the Ducks and just Portland forest green. But that was the Seattle Supersonics, and we can't do that. Man, this is tough. It feels sacrilegious to think of the Blazers as not red and white and black. Without green, without a nice Kelly green. Oh man. Could you do some blue white combo for rain? Could you get some some nice rain in there?
Blue, white, and then what else?
This is Damn you, Terry. I'm struggling with this.
You're already duplicating one of the. I mean, I think white is, you can use that as a contrast color. You could have picked one of either white or black as the contrast color.
I'm going to go blue.
Okay.
I'm going to go gray.
Oh, okay. And
no white. No white.
No white.
Gray.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm going to go white.
Whoa. You're going to go blue, gray, and white.
Yep.
Okay.
Final answer.
Well, you lose because that's the wrong. No, just kidding. Wrong answer, buddy.
You have failed college.
I have a very. I think that's fair. And wait, sorry. And they represent what again?
Blue is for rain. That's the only true meaningful thing behind it. Then I looked outside and it was kind of gray, so I felt like gray was pretty. I'm really trying to emphasize the seasonal depression of Portland with this. There's a combination.
Okay, that's fair. I have an interesting answer for this, and it does dip a little bit into Seattle Supersonic territory. But Connor, were you aware that the city of Portland has its own official flag? Is this something that you knew?
I did know this.
You did?
Pretty sure.
So I want to show you something. I don't know if this will show up on camera.
Is that their flag? I was not aware of this.
Is it going to focus for me? No.
I see it. It's
this is a coin.
Describe for the listeners. Yeah. What?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I don't know. I wish it would just focus, but it's not going to. This is a coin that I received with the Portland flag on it in commemoration of my service with the city of Portland. You'll notice that this flag, Connor, has a green, blue, and yellow. It's in kind of a Nordic cross kind of a shape. There's also white accents. This has been the official city flag for the city of Portland, Oregon since 1969. The green stands for the forests of our green city. The yellow for the agriculture and commerce. And Connor, can you guess what the blue stands for?
Is it for rain?
It's for our rivers, but rivers are made out of water. And so are clouds, and so is rain. So, Connor, I have to go with this kind of baby blue, corn yellow, and forest green.
Well, you win, Brandon. You had that in the bank. You had it ready, locked and loaded.
Had this coin right in the bank, but I'm kind of cheating, but I'm cheating because this coin has followed me and is now sitting politely right below my laptop, which I have up on a stand. But I think it would make sense to let's keep it as Portland as we possibly can. What's more Portland than the Portland, Oregon flag? I don't know, Connor, how these colors would translate to television. It seems like a rough combo: yellow, green, blue. I don't know.
I think I actually like it, and the coin looks cool. And I think.
Wait a minute. Late breaking news, because I am so incredibly loud, my wife, Cassie, has chimed in from the other room and texted me. It came up on my watch. Cassie has come up with her own 3-color combination.
Nice.
So Cassie has come up. She wants to see the Portland colors. I actually like this a lot. Black, yellow, and purple. Ooh.
Wow.
Black and yellow, and purple.
Deep tones.
I've always been a fan of yellow and black. I do feel like that contrast really pops. I don't think
Khalifa was also a big fan of that combination.
Patron saint of NBA team colors, apparently, Wiz Khalifa. But I don't know. Have we seen? I'm thinking in my mind of all the different color combinations in the NBA and those that have been. Have we ever seen black and yellow? I'm thinking like college, like Georgia Tech, maybe?
That's the first thing that came to my mind was Georgia Tech. But
like, not
is there even a yellow color in the NBA?
Even Indiana. That's more like a goldenrod.
Yeah,
I guess the Lakers.
It's like kind of like, oh god, yeah. Okay, there's been yellow. But yeah.
The Knicks
I
are
had
orange.
erased it from my mind, the Lakers.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, okay, so quick pop quiz, then we'll get out of here. But if you were to pick your favorite color combination of any NBA team, current or past, what would you go with? I actually do think the Blazers are pretty high. Like red, black, and white is a good combo, but if you couldn't pick them,
because the Blazers, that it pops, but it's also very clean, which I like that a lot. I really do have an affection for the supersonic color combination because I was at that game in the preseason and like I loved the old jerseys. I think that's a very cool color combination.
That's fair. Yeah, I like it. I'm going to have to go with one Charlotte Hornets. The combination of purple and teal and black and light blue just really works well for me. I've been a big teal guy since I got a different version of not this exact watch, different Garmin watch a couple of years ago. If you go to my website, Connor, you'll notice that the primary color on my site is in fact teal. I use it for my the watermark on my logo and all that stuff. So big teal guy over here. So shout out to the Charlotte Hornets. Shout out to Terry. Shout out to Cloudy. I'm going to double check. Do you want to hit anything before we skedaddle out of here for New Year's?
No, I think we did a solid job of hitting all the stuff we talked about pre-pod, which might be the first time we really did it. Maybe.
I think we're doing it. We're doing it well. And if you want to do it well with us, you can check us out at WeLikeTheBlazers.com. You can also check us out on BlueSky. Search for Connor Bergen or Brandon Mullen-Goldner. You can also find us on any podcatcher. Just type in We Like the Blazers and you will find us there. And that's all we're going to talk about today. Happy New Year to everybody. Oh yeah.
Happy New Year. Congrats on becoming a father soon. That is the biggest news of all.
Thank you. I am not prepared. But is anybody?
No,
is anybody truly?
That's what I've heard. But I've been told everybody says that, and then they're prepared. So
I've been. The legend has foretold. I cannot wait for this kid to cross me up when they are 2 years old and breaking ankles, and they make it to the NBA as a 14-year-old. I'm looking forward to it. They can carry me through retirement, Connor. Yes. And if you want to find us, you can always do that. I've already done all this. I can just get out of here now. Actually, we're done. We're done.
Hey, as your podcast host, I will be your son's godfather. May old acquaintance. I'm not going to sing that. I thought about it. Goodbye, everybody. This has been great.
All Lang Syne. Happy 2024. See you next year. Peace.
Bye.